Rick is going to go ahead and introduce our speaker today. Thank you.
Next week we have Colin McKenna from the Anderson Center in Red Wing. I don't know how many people may have been there, but I was there for an open house a few weeks ago, and it's very interesting, and I think you'll have a lot of interesting. He has got quite the credentials, and he'll have a nice talk about the Anderson Center for us. And this week we have Jen Vieth from Carpenter Nature Center, and Jessie and Scott. I'll let her introduce her associates, and I'm sure she's going to fill us in on all the great stuff that's happening at Carpenter Nature Center.
Thanks, Rick. Well, I can tell you guys are a fun group because when I said I was coming here, everybody wanted to come with me. So our bird handling Vanna today will be Jessie, and most of you have probably met Jessie already. She travels to the different county festivals. She goes into the schools when the schools can't travel to us. Campfire programs, Rivertown Days programs. So she's on the road with the animals all the time, teaching people about nature and people of all ages. So she'll be helping us with the surprise guest at the end. And then I'm really excited to introduce you to our board president. Just like Freedom Park and other nonprofits, we have a 20-member volunteer board of directors that often don't get as much praise as they deserve. Everybody thanks the people volunteering the orchard or teaching the classes or banding the birds, but they don't realize how much time, as Shar knows, it takes behind the scenes, going over financials, dealing with 20 really, really smart people that all have different ideas. And so Scott Northard is our board president, and I'd love to give him a round of applause. So Scott will probably jump in with a few words as I'm talking. Can everybody at the back hear me okay?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I can do that. I'll try not to talk too fast too. So my name is Jen Vieth. I've been at Carpenter Nature Center since 2005. I was the development director there first for 8 years, and then when longtime director Jim Fitzpatrick retired after 32 years, I got to be the executive director. So it's been a very steep learning curve, as Israel can attest. But I would like to share some updates about Carpenter, since it's been probably at least 5 years since I've talked to the Kiwanis, and then also tell you about a really exciting project that's still hush-hush, so you're in the know. So, do you have any words that either of you want to jump in with right away?
No, I'll just pitch in where we needed.
Okay.
You're waiting for my cue.
All right. So how many of you have been to Carpenter's Minnesota campus? A lot of people. You can look right across the river and see it, or you can pull sleds across the river and come visit. It was started in 1981. It was originally the home of Tom and Edna Carpenter. They lived back there in the 40s, and when they got on in years, they didn't have any children, and they wanted to leave their amazing 325-acre estate for others to enjoy. And our first board of directors took that goal and created Carpenter as it is today. Scott, can we slide it just about a half a foot this way so that we can see the whole? There we go. So what that developed into is environmental education for youth. And that was that very first board of directors that said we need to teach future generations about nature. But we don't just teach, we also put our time into what we're saying, so we protect habitat in addition. The Nature Center grew from an original 325 acres to today it's 725 acres. We've restored over 365 acres of prairie, which is one of our most endangered habitats in this area of the world. There's less than 1/10 of 1% of our native prairie left in Minnesota. So while it looks like a scruffy field, when you get into the habitat, there's an immensely diverse and cool ecosystem right there in those beautiful grasslands. And then it's not quite enough to just teach our amazing school children, we also teach people of all ages. So from summer camp to moonlight adult snowshoe hikes, we have something year-round for everybody to get out and connect with nature. So our quick statistics, before we get into all the exciting things we've been up to. We grew from a very small number of visitors in the early years to today we average between 26,000 and 36,000 visitors a year. So that's a lot of people coming right down here to the confluence. Of that number, about 7,000 are K-12 student visitors. A lot of them from here in Prescott, but we also serve Hastings. We get requests from as far away as Minneapolis. We've had people from New Richmond, students from New Richmond. So we have quite a service area. As I said, our conservation impact, restoring prairie and 725 total acres. And then staffing, we do all this with a teeny tiny staff, 8 full-time staff. But the way it works is we have 266 incredible volunteers. And when you tally the hours they donate every year, it's over 12,000 hours. So when you think of the labor that goes into it, it's just incredible. And then the budget right now has grown to be about $1 million a year. Most of that is for staff time, and it's almost all from philanthropic sources. So from foundations, gifts, grants, family donations, sponsorships. Very little comes from our really cool orchard, because it costs more to run an orchard than you get in apple sales. And very little, we charge only a nominal fee for the students. Any questions about the basic statistics? Jump in if you have any questions, because I want to make sure I'm filling you in on what you want to hear. But since we last talked, a lot of things have happened at Carpenter. So before, when I talked to you, we didn't have an outreach program. If the students couldn't afford the busing, which is over $7 a child right now, they couldn't get to Carpenter. Or if their schedule is such that they couldn't sneak out of math class to get to Carpenter for a field trip, they couldn't enjoy Carpenter unless it was with their parents in the summer. Well, we went out on a limb, raised some extra dollars, and now Jessie travels up and down the river valley and beyond. In fact, she gets booked in Rochester for a few weeks every year. And we just signed a contract yesterday to be teaching water quality programs in the schools in Cottage Grove area. And so that's going to be, how many weeks, Jessie?
It's a 6-week water quality workshop. So I'll be visiting the school for 5 weeks, and then they have a field trip day the 6th week.
And so we did get a really cool grant from 3M to buy all sorts of really cool water testing equipment. So that's a great use for schools. So every school doesn't need the water testing equipment and a water quality specialist. We can travel, do it, and have one set of equipment. So I'm sure we'll talk to Jason at the middle school, high school, see if he's interested. We also have partnerships with the Phipps, the YMCA, Borner Farm here in town, City of Hastings, and that's all with this new outreach position. So it's just been a great boon to the whole community, the River Valley community. And then we have this really creative volunteer neighbor in Wisconsin say, why don't you guys have an art festival? And so 5 years ago, we started our first Carpenter Art Festival. And I think that first year it was nice weather, and then every other year it rained. Until last year, we had 1,500 people come to a field in Hudson to enjoy some of the most incredible artists you've ever seen. Our art director, volunteer art director, is very picky, so he won't take 10 watercolor artists, he'll take 1. And he sort of travels around and checks them out and invites them in. So it's a wonderful opportunity to enjoy art in an amazing natural setting, and then the artists all donate back proceeds to Carpenter Nature Center. So great way to help teach future generations and enjoy art. If any of you, I know I've talked to Israel about it, we do some amazing bird banding research, and we've been studying wild bird populations for over 32 years, over 38 years now. But 5 years ago, we started an owl research project. These teeny tiny northern saw-whet owls migrate through the region, but nobody ever sees them migrating because we're all asleep. Well, in the 5 years, we've banded over 200 of these owls just passing right by your homes in Prescott. And this collaboration is with researchers throughout Canada and the US. And our owls have been found in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, 800 miles away. So it's a really neat way to bring home to the community how connected we are with our environment here to the rest of the continent. So that's been a very popular project. We have done some work with the USDA, the University of River Falls, the Minnesota DNR, so getting some really cool grants to accomplish great things. And then 3 years ago now, we started the Wisconsin Master Naturalist St. Croix Valley Training. And what that is we have a bunch of certified instructor partners, Willow River State Park, St. Croix County, Israel's predecessor was part of that. And we have trainings up and down the river to teach environmental education volunteers, stewardship volunteers, and citizen science volunteers. And it's not enough to want more volunteers for Carpenter. We want to share that resource with everyone from the Friends of the Kinney to Freedom Park so that our whole community has more educated volunteers. And so one of the classes is held right here at Freedom Park. It's a really great collaboration with our many nonprofits up and down the river. Summer camps, and then this year some new exciting things. We, if you've driven St. Croix Trail, there's a chunk where the trees have been taken out. We got a grant for $120,000 to put in a phosphorus capturing basin so that all the water that runs off the farms with heavy phosphorus loading doesn't end up going into the St. Croix River. And so if you want to check it out, it's going to be pretty neat. We'll be doing the final planting in the spring. And then we're excited this year to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Earth Day with our birding festival. We're inviting 50 youth teams to participate in the birding festival for the 50th anniversary. So I talk pretty quickly. Y'all still with me?
Yeah.
Everybody's listening so intently. So any questions about any of those endeavors? Okay. So now the exciting thing that you all want to hear about. Many of you may have no idea that we have an amazing 300-acre campus in Wisconsin. It's just a little south of Hudson. How many of you know where Troy Burn Golf Course is? Quite a few. So it's north of Troy Burn, but south of Camp St. Croix. So right there at the south end of Hudson. And this is the view into what we call the bowl. For obvious reasons, it looks like a bowl, but a lot of this is remnant habitat that's never been farmed, and so you can find really cool rare species in that area. And even though you're super close to Highway 94, if you're there in the summer with the breeze blowing those prairie grasses and just an amazing bird diversity, it's just like being this nature oasis. It's incredible. And so we've been working on this project. We've had that site for over 30 years. And up until now, it's been open dawn to dusk. There weren't even any trails for a long time. We put a porta potty out there probably about 5 to 7 years ago to see, well, are people actually going to come? And it's getting a lot of use. When we started to work on it, we wanted to make sure before we added anything to it that we know what's on the property. Because part of our mission is protecting land, and we don't want to, plan this great building and plop it on something rare, right? So we spent over a year developing a land management plan, and part of that was figuring out what's using the site. We used experts, so we got a grant to hire an expert to come and look at all the rare plants and then document it. But we also got the community involved through BioBlitzes. Has anybody here participated in a BioBlitz? So what it is 24 hours, you go out and you count every wild creature and wild plant that you see and hear. And if you don't know how to identify them, you tag along with some expert who does. So everything from fungus to birds to foxes, and then you tabulate that. And so we've been doing this will be year number 5, I think, of our BioBlitzes. And we've been able to document that we have, doesn't look like much, but the rare kittentail, which is a state, I believe, in Wisconsin endangered plant. And then this bird, which this photo's not all that exciting, but these are so hard to see. This is a Henslow sparrow. So they're endangered in Minnesota and threatened in Wisconsin. The prairie restoration work we've done in Wisconsin has enabled this species to come back and breed on the site, and they're kind of all over there. So if you want to see a Henslow sparrow, you can head out to that site. You'll probably hear it, not see it, because they sit at the top of the grass, but they're taller grasses, and they make their little call. It's almost like a sparrow sneeze, so they're easy to miss. But if you want to see it, that's a good place to find them out there. Yeah, it's like a little click. So really neat birds, but hard to spot. So once we figured out our land management plan, where the rare stuff is, where the good restoration is happening, then we thought, well, what should we do with the land? What should we build? Should we build? Why don't we ask the community what they want and what they use? Because as you know, board of directors and staff, we have lots of great ideas, but that's like 30 different great ideas. So we did a survey back in 2015, and this slide here, this picture is just documenting something that surprised everybody who's analyzed the data. is that the majority of people travel over 30 miles to get to a nature center. Isn't that interesting? You think of how far you travel to go to a grocery store. You're not going 30 miles to a grocery store. But this is consistent across both surveys that we did, and the surveys were over 5 years apart. And a fun fact, for this survey, we knew exactly where the different answers came from. The people who said 5 miles or less, they all live right next to the Wisconsin campus. So kind of like you guys that can walk across the river, they didn't want to travel far, just walk out the front door. And then this is another really important piece that came through loud and clear. Do you feel students have enough quality opportunities to learn about the natural world? And as we know, the answer was very strongly no, that students need more opportunities. And the surveys where we did 224 surveys that were returned to us in 2015, and we had another 98 surveys just recently this year in 2019. So there's some interesting stuff about what the people wanted if we were going to develop the campus. By far, walking trails, number one, bar none. What was interesting is there were some write-ins. Some people wanted a wine bar. We're not going to build a wine bar. Meeting space was important to some. Live animals, which is something Carpenter's really known for, is having these amazing animal ambassadors that people can get up close and learn about. Wildflowers, so getting out in nature. Restrooms. And that was kind of the crux of when we were looking at what kind of building to build. Just having a pavilion wouldn't cut it. People wanted not porta potties. So even when we're talking to schools, when we say, yeah, we've got great trails, we've got all this habitat, and we have a, ADA accessible porta potty, teachers say no. We're not, no thanks. So if we're going to build a restroom with running water and warm room, what else are we going to build with it? So what was interesting is looking at the survey they just did, our consultants did in 2019, it was very similar. Hiking trails still super high, family activities high, land management high. So just consistent results through time. So we hired a gentleman to help us work on an integrated site plan, because as a nature center, your goal isn't to get people inside like at a library. The goal at a nature center is to get them to the site and get them outside. So it's not about, here, we're going to build the coolest building and make you want to stay in it. We want to build a building and trail system that makes you want to get out and explore and engage with the environment. So that was a very robust process. Full board participation, 4 big meetings and site visits. And they all agreed 100% on the project, which, as you know, running a board doesn't always happen. And then we had a really cool sort of windfall. Christensen Creative donated a branding campaign, a marketing campaign for our project. But we weren't ready to embark on the project, so it was top secret for about 8 months. So they developed the Grow, Share, Preserve, because it's about growing access for the community, sharing the site and its amazing features with the community, and preserving the natural ecosystem. And they just won an award in December for their graphic design work. So we'll give you a little look at some of that. It's all native species in the pictures, mostly taken at Carpenter. We invited some of the leaders from the Hudson community to share their thoughts about whether this would be valuable and why it would be valuable. So one of our partners from the FIPS said, Carpenter Nature Center has such a great reputation in the St. Croix Valley for its Minnesota campus. Expanding in Wisconsin with the interpretive center and developed trail system is exciting. It's going to be much more of an asset to our efforts to get people engaging and connecting with nature. So there's some great quotes by some lovely people. We developed a quick fact sheet, which we're going to have some here if you're interested. The chair of the Northwoods and Waters was excited to hear about the project as well. I'm looking, how are we doing on time? Okay, good. And then we've been working with the architects to look at what the building plans will be like. So our campaign chair, Jim Freund, sees the interpretive building as being the heart of the Nature Center, and will give people a chance to experience what Carpenter's about. This is so hot off the presses, I just got this copy on Monday. So this is what the building will look like at this point. It's going to be a lot of passive energy so that it's going to be super energy efficient. It'll be nestled in the southern chunk of the site in the woods with a nice curving driveway running between two wetlands and a loop around so the school buses don't have to back up, which is neat.
Good idea.
If you've ever watched school buses trying to back up, that's not good. And then it'll be a pretty small, modest building to start out with, so more like a community nature center as opposed to a giant environmental learning center with 5 school buses a day. It'll be more kind of what our visitor center here is without all the extra buildings. There'll be a large discovery room that's modifiable like our one across the river that can hold up to 150 people. This one could hold up to 190. There'll be a little family corner, which is what we heard really strongly in all the surveys. People wanted a place, pardon me, a place where they could go and sit on a couch and look out the windows at nature. And they wanted a place that if they were getting together with some of their neighbors to go out and volunteer or go out on their day, to sit and drink coffee, talk about the world, watch nature, and then go on their way. So this place will have sort of a bit of a private corner with coffee. So if you want to come up there and before you go cut down buckthorn, hang out and have some coffee, that'll be very comfortable. And then restrooms accessible if we have an after-hours gardening event. And then a classroom with a separate wall and doors, so we don't have to heat it all the time if there aren't students, but that we can have the students in there while guests still enjoy the rest of the nature center, as opposed to when they're all connected. Good? All right. And then what has been happening so far today, we've already put in 2 council rings that were called for in the integrated site plan. Really cool is that the land, or the rock, was from the Hudson area and it's got fossils in it. So when you sit on these council rings, it really ties you to place over time because it's just amazing. So you have to come visit those. And then we've already been fundraising. So the goal, the cost of the total project, including program development, is $3.5 million. And right before Christmas, we got a check for $1 million. Wow. So we're at $2.2 million before we announce it to the public. So that's 63%. Yeah, it's crazy. And the project timeline. So currently we are in the silent phase. Our board of directors is meeting with community leaders and asking for a pledge or a gift. The project timeline, we did our feasibility study and all that readiness, and we're moving along. And then our construction timeline. We're here, but what you can't see is groundbreaking should happen this spring with building completion hopefully next spring, if not summer. You know, a little flexibility there. If anybody's built a house or a building, you know it doesn't always go smoothly. And then what difference will it make? This is one of my favorite quotes. So Heather Loughlin, who's the president of the St. Croix Valley Foundation, said, "A place like this isn't just a gift to the community, but to the future of our region. Nature centers like this can spark a lifelong love of nature, opening our eyes to the treasures in our own backyard and helping build the next generation of outdoor enthusiasts who will continue to advocate for the environment in the future." And right now, CNC is a place for thousands of visitors to enjoy every year. This is from the Raptor release, bringing all these folks to our community. With impacts around the world, the birds that nest here in the valley, some of our juncos are recovered in Alaska. Our osprey are recovered in South America. Saw-whet owls from Saskatchewan all the way out to Nova Scotia. Our research and the work that we all do together connects to people around the world. And we're inspiring and connecting future leaders. So see, these are some of the kids we get to teach. Because we know today, kids spend 6 to 8 hours a day looking at technology. And we know that our environment, whether it's monarchs or polar bears, it's in trouble. And because we know kids, and kids of all ages, need nature. There's a ton of research out there about the physical and mental benefits of spending time in nature. If you're struggling with a problem you're trying to figure out the solution to, if you take a hike in nature, your creative problem solving improves. And that's just one of the things that nature can do. ADHD symptoms decrease if you spend time in nature. Just, it's incredible. They're starting to joke about prescribing vitamin N. And so how can you get involved? At CNC you can volunteer, and I can tell you from the volunteers I work with, sometimes when people retire, they're not sure who they're going to be. all their life they've been CEO of X. And they retire and they find such meaning hanging out with their volunteer family at Carpenter, whether it's bird banding or like these two guys, Paul and Tom, out in the orchard. It's just an amazing family of volunteers. And you can come and attend events like our Apple Festival. You can support Carpenter, of course, being a nonprofit. I would be amiss if I didn't mention that. And then you can enjoy all that we have to offer to the community all year long. And coming up soon, we have ice fishing, Masters of the Sky, Bird Festival, Summer Camp, Art Festival, Raptor Release, Hawk Count, and Apple Fest. So lots and lots to do. And I think I have just a really brief amount of time for questions, and Jesse can get out our guest. Great.
Any questions?
How many square foot was the building that you were looking at in
We're
Wisconsin?
looking at about 4,500 to 5,000 square feet, so not monstrous.
Right.
Small footprint, but should it take off, because we notice a lot of people visit that site because it's so close to 94 and very accessible, we could add satellite classrooms. So say we get a huge demand for K-12 students, we'd add a separate satellite building for classes. But for right now, it's smallish, sustainable, so that we can run both centers, because as you know, fundraising to run a center is a challenge, and we don't want to undermine what we're doing.
Israel's that about the same size as Freedom Park? Do you know how many square feet you have?
I don't know offhand.
Okay.
Does anybody at my board know? I don't think it's even close to 4,500. I think that would be probably, yeah, I'd say probably about 2,000.
Yeah, you had a great question. How much parking, right? Because our site right now has really small parking. It'd have modest parking at the beginning, but we would have an overflow parking lot, and they're talking about pervious paving. So the water runs through, as opposed to, you know, how that hard surface cools the water, and you get the water heating up and it destroys the ecosystem and hurts the fish and all that. So
Is there a sign on the Wisconsin side?
little brown signs on the road, very small. You wouldn't know it unless you were there.
So you pull in and there's a place to park there?
The current place, so on 300 East Cove Road, it looks like you're driving to an old farmhouse. There's parking there, and there's a tiny little parking lot right in the center prairie, but it's kind of a good secret. So we're gonna have to have more hikes there.
Yeah.
We've been having owl banding and the art festival, but it's pretty modest still.
We can probably park 15 or 20 cars normally by 300 Cove Road. And then
Unless
four-
it's an art festival, and then we park the whole
then we
lot.
park out in the field. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think it's going to take away from the existing visitors to the existing center?
That's a great question, and we asked that a number of times in that first survey. You know, if we built this, would you stop visiting Minnesota? And one of the neat things we've been involved in the last 5 years is the Association of Nature Center Administrators. We started a chapter in Minnesota. And so there's over 110 nature center type directors. We meet quarterly, and it seems that people visit multiple. And they, just because there's one close here doesn't mean they're not going to visit another. Kind of like on the Minnesota side, we're there, St. Croix Bluffs is there, Afton State Park is there, and we all still have tons of visitors. So the goal is no, it should just add depth and breadth, and then be more accessible to the Hudson community.
And the
But that
plan-
is, yeah, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the plan is not to repeat all the same programs in Wisconsin that we have in Minnesota. We're not going to have an apple orchard. We may not have the beekeeping activity or the maple syruping. We'll have some different programs over in the Wisconsin campus. You're kind of uniquely positioned here to be 15 minutes from either campus. But there's a lot of people in River Falls or Hudson or Lakeville or New Richmond, or even as far over as Menominee, you know, that will have access to this and might consider the Minnesota campus to be a little too far.
And then I have one sort of story about that. So when we were first doing that survey, I had my bird banding volunteers fill out the survey. And of course, they wanted everything that was in Minnesota in Wisconsin. And then we went there, and this gal asked, can I have my survey back? I want to change it, because this site is so special and so different. And if you do explore them, they're a very different feeling. The one really helps you feel connected to that whole prairie history through time. And it's just more wild and more natural. And this one, there's a beautiful estate on a bluff, and there's parking space for school buses to loop around, and you have raptor releases. So they're very different flavors.
Yep.
So our hope is they can benefit each other.
I'm concerned about, I don't want to see an impact on Freedom Park.
They won't be.
No,
We're very
Work with
different.
them?
Partner.
We're very different, and we're very different partners. And the beautiful part, if I get to speak to that for a second, the beautiful part is that we have a partnership, and we're shaping the direction of our organization in a way that's not going to overlap with what's happening here.
That's good to hear.
So yeah.
yeah, and that's definitely, and I can't speak for future generations of leaders, but I know when I started in this field over 20 years ago, it was almost like there were little cold wars, right, between raptor centers or nature centers, sort of like, I'm not going to tell Israel how we're doing this because he'll just copy us. But I don't know if it's the internet that brought this perspective. There seems to be a lot more collaborative work. So the director of Dodge Nature Center and I get together quarterly to have lunch. We're the most similar nature centers. We're both completely 501c3 nonprofits. We both aren't city, state, or county. We overlap a ton, and we're kind of within 15 minutes of each other with their Cottage Grove campus. But we can collaborate better and raise both our jobs and our reach by working together as opposed to secrecy. I'm constantly trying to make sure that Israel's got leads. Like I was just telling about a gal I met yesterday that would be a great programming opportunity. And then our master naturalist that we taught, she's teaching programs there and had how many, 40-something people show up?
For our first session.
So if you bring cool people to Freedom Park, next time they might visit Carpenter and then they'll go back to Freedom. And St. Croix Bluffs does the same thing. They'll send their campers to Carpenter. We all do different things. There's no point in us being a river history center. We're a wildlife and hiking and prairie center. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It's a great question.
Just to introduce our guest.
He just roused for community partnerships. That behavior that some of you just saw where he puffed up really, really big and shook his feathers is called a rouse. And it's something that he only does when he's relatively comfortable. So that's just, you can give yourselves all a pat on the back for being such a great audience. This is Carpenter Nature Center's Ambassador Red-Tailed Hawk. He has been with us at our facility since 1998. He's one of the oldest members of our animal ambassador team. The only one older is the box turtle, because he is older than the hills. But otherwise, this guy, he's kind of, I don't know, he's kind of I would say he's kind of like the rock star of the program. We've got a lot of other really good animals, but he is just so super solid, coming and traveling with me for outreaches. He's a very handsome bird, and Jen and I joke that he's a gateway animal because you might not in your day-to-day notice a red-tailed hawk outside, even though they're everywhere. They hang out on top of telephone poles and light posts. But it's incredible to me how many people I have spoken with over the years who, when they see him up close, they become so enamored with him, and then they'll come back to me, say, a week or two or even a month or more later and say, after I saw you with the red-tailed hawk, it flipped some kind of switch in me, and now I see the hawks everywhere. I'm tuned into it more, and not only then are they seeing the red-tailed hawks more, they become interested in other animals and other parts of nature where they're more connected. You know, he helps to kind of light a fire or spark people's interest, and then they get out into the community and spend time in nature and hopefully are making decisions that are beneficial to the environment then. Because you're just so darn handsome. Yes.
What does he eat?
Do you really want to know? Everybody's all done eating, so I can talk about it. Well, raptors are carnivores. So, and they're hunters. They eat meat. At the Nature Center, we feed him primarily mice and rats, but he also gets things like chicken and quail. Out in the wild, he would be eating similar things, small mammals, other birds, and red-tailed hawks have been even known to catch and chase lizards and snakes and even eat turtles as well. They'll from time to time pick at roadkill and things like that, but for the most part, they're hanging out on top of those telephone poles and light posts looking for a rodent snack in the ditch. It's usually what they're looking for.
So when you feed them, I'm sorry, someone else is trying. When you feed them, are you providing them live food or?
That's a great question. We do not feed our raptors live prey for a couple of different reasons. First and foremost, we actually are concerned about them becoming injured in pursuit of some kind of live prey. And you'd be surprised too what a fight a mouse or a rat can put up. And if for whatever reason they were to become scratched or bitten, any small injury like that could become infected. And we just want to reduce any sort of safety concerns in that way. And then also kind of a more secondary reason we don't feed them live prey is that being a nature center with a lot of kids around, and especially if it's somebody's first time out at a nature center, we don't want to scar them by showing them nature a little bit too close, if you know what I'm saying. So no, we do not feed our animals live prey. Yeah.
How much does he weigh and how long does he live?
Ooh, great questions. I feel like we should turn this into some kind of game with like the piggy bank that you guys have going around here. What do you think? Do you think I'm like a secret bodybuilder in my spare time? You just shook your head no. My feelings are really hurt.
7 pounds.
7 pounds? Okay. 3. Any other guesses? 10. So I'm learning new things every day. Jen just sent me an article the other day that stated that most of what you see on a bird's body, most of that bulk is feathers. And the feathers, if you were to weigh them, weigh 2 to 3 times as much as the bird's skeleton. Believe it or not, because birds have hollow bones. So you consider they've got hollow bones and all the feathers. He weighs about 2 1/4 pounds.
Really?
Yep.
That's sufficient.
So not a secret bodybuilder.
Hey, you're strong.
Right. And then to his age, we don't know for sure because we didn't see him hatch. But based on his history with when he was relocated to our facility after his rehab, like I said, he's been at our facility since 1998. So you do the math on that, and that means he's been at our facility for 22 years. We figure he's got to be about 24, 25 years old. Can you tell I've been doing this a long time? I saw a movie and I was like, it's happening. We figure he's around 24, 25 years old, probably. And out in the wild, they live around 12-ish years, maybe 15, if they've got plenty of food, if they're not competing too much for territory, if the weather's not too bad, things like that. But there's a lot of stress living out in the wild, and a lot of raptors don't make it past their first couple of years of life, but if they can get past that, 10, 12, 15 years, somewhere around in there. But when they're in a human care situation, because you're removing all those stresses of being out in the wild, their lifespan can be doubled or sometimes even tripled depending on the species. So we figure he's about 24 or 25 years old. Did a presentation at a school this morning and that blew the kids' minds. All of the 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. 25? That's so old! And I'm like, careful now. I could talk about him all day, but I know that you guys probably have other business to attend to, and if there are other questions about the Wisconsin Campus Expansion Project, feel free to ask Jen or Scott. I can hang out up here with the red tail and answer some more questions for you guys if you want. All I ask is that I'm going to probably stand on the back corner of this tarp, and all I ask is that you just kind of use that as an imaginary boundary to kind of just respect his space. So,
Well, thank you guys so much.